Lighthouse Young Writers Program co-director, and this is our late night reading featuring Lighthouse faculty. I love how our late night is at 7:15. It feels super late to me. We'll be featuring 4 readers tonight. One variation from what I saw was on the announcement. Brian couldn't be here, but we do have um, everyone else. So I think Wendy joined us, and her name might not have been on that screen. And a quick announcement, you'll find links to all of our readings, as well as our readers' books, in the chat bar. We'll also put in the chat a link to the LitFest cheat sheet, which is your handy guide to all of our events and classes that have space left, including tomorrow's lunchtime business panel on submitting to LitMags. So I'd like to thank the SCFD, National Endowment for the Arts, and Colorado Creative Industries for helping make LitFest 2021 possible. And a special thanks to Book Bar, who's our official book selling partner this year. So we'll get started with our first reader. And just a note, the readers are reading Wendy, and then Chip, and then me, and then Paula. And at the end, we'll have time for some questions. Wendy J Fox is a 2-time Colorado Book Award finalist and the author of 4 books of fiction, including the novel If the Ice Had Held and the forthcoming collection, What If We Were Somewhere Else, which releases on November 1st. She has written for The Rumpus, BuzzFeed, Self, Business Insider, and Ms., and her work has appeared in literary magazines, including Washington Square, Euphony, and Painted Bride Quarterly. So let's give our virtual applause to Wendy.
Thanks, Kim. I'm going to read from one of the stories in my forthcoming book, What If We Were Somewhere Else? It's called The Circle. In my office, my coworkers complained about the HVAC. They complained about Kate, my boss, and they complained about the roaches that crept around the copy machine and slunk through the restrooms. I didn't like the roaches either, but the complaining, it just wore me out. The entire summer when I was 13, I slept outside, sometimes at the foot of Barband's yurt while she stayed in my bedroom. That summer, she was in love with Pablo, but they needed space. And sometimes in the soft grass that had grown up around one of the converted school buses where a boy I liked lived with his parents. His name was Jay, short for Jaybird, because as a child, he had squawked at everything. In the circle where I had grown up had never been a planned commune. A few wood-framed houses, some inherited land, and then a fire pit, a steam lodge, what became an outdoor kitchen, and then a ring of converted buses and vans, campers extended by tarps and wall tents, yurts, army surplus gear, 4 teepees, and the occasional bivy sack nestled between, wood smoke and drums, garden sheds filled with beef and marijuana hanging to dry, the ticking of solar panels and the occasional roar of a generator, carpets of pine needles, of gravel, of mud, of snow, our bare feet, our bee boxes and herb gardens, a spring-fed well, the outhouses off to the side, flanked by the collection of working and half-working cars that belonged to anyone who could reach the pedals or was willing to take a chance on a roll start, either a push from behind or pushing yourself half in and half out of the cab, gripping the wheel while nudging the rickety truck down the incline. And as the speed picks up just at the bottom, just where it's about time to pound the powerless brakes, jam the gear into first and pop the clutch and cross your fingers for the engine to engage. If it works, you'll lurch some, but hope is like that. In the office, I always took the stairs. I wore a set of white headphones connected to an old Walkman I had found at the Goodwill. I listened to tapes of bird calls or studio sessions with Peter Tosh. I also liked Vivaldi and Cat Stevens because both put me in a good mood. In our home study, we'd learned that dreadlocks were not only worn by us, circle people, a mostly white group in the Rocky Mountains, but also by aesthetics, Islamic dervishes, and sadhu Hindis who have left behind all material attachments to live in caves and forests and temples. It was a right, and we could choose it at puberty for girls on their first menses. I was 11. We didn't think we were appropriating hair. We thought we were Samson or Rasta. We thought we were our own Nazarite. At first, I had hitchhiked to Denver. I had found a small studio apartment. I would purchase the first razor I had ever owned in my life and shave my body from toe to crown. I was as smooth as shell, as smooth as soap. In Denver, at first, I had been working in a natural food store that hired me on the spot based on my knowledge of essential oils alone. When I later talked to my mother about trying for the office job, I could hear her frowning through the phone. Is this about money? Maybe you should get a roommate, she told me. It's not natural to live alone. You don't see this in nature. Bears are solitary, Mom, I said. Bears are an exception, she said. Moose are solitary too, I said. Well, you're not a moose and you're not a bear. You're a human animal and humans are social. You should get a roommate. I don't want a roommate. You can't make decisions about life based on money though, she said. I changed my hair, I said. Oh no, she said. You sound well. Thank you, she said. I'm fine, but I miss you. At first, I had tried to untangle my dreadlocks. The natural food store where I worked had a cream that was supposed to help loosen the hair, and I applied it and soaked my head in a bucket of scalding water, like the directions said. Then I started at the ends, trying to pick the strands loose, but mostly the hair broke off and ended up on my floor. After a week of this, I had only a few inches free, and I was out of cream. It was easier to shave than I had thought. First, I clipped close to my scalp with my kitchen scissors, and then it seemed so simple to take off what was left, razor sparkling. The shock turned out to be the slow kind, catching my reflection in a window, bald head wrapped in a scarf, or later, when there was just a pinky's length of hair and it was curling. As a child, my hair had been perfectly straight. I wondered what else I would find out about myself. Thanks. This is my book, What If We Were Somewhere Else? It's Link Short Stories, comes out on November 1st.
Thank you. That was wonderful. And again, you can see the links to all of the books in the chat. So thank you again, Wendy. Next, we have Chip. Chip Livingston is the author of 2 poetry books, a novel, and an essay and story collection. His most recent work appears in the Massachusetts Review, the Los Angeles Review, the Cincinnati Review, Juked, and New American Writing. Chip's current project is editing the literary correspondence between Lucia Berlin and Kenwald Elmsley, forthcoming from University of New Mexico Press in 2022. Chip has given and taken classes at Lighthouse since 2013. He also teaches in the Institute of American Indian Arts MFA program. He lives in Montevideo, Uruguay.
Hello, thank you, Kim. Thanks everyone. Thanks to Lighthouse for hosting us. And it is a late night reading here in Montevideo. It's 10. So I'm going to read a micro nonfiction. It's called Gringochos. I didn't mean to scare the Gocho. I was falling in love with the Guapo and wanted him to be comfortable, to trust me, and to see a part of Uruguay he'd never seen. This last part, the motivation I used to convince him to leave his routine. Come on, I said, it's a weekend. You have to know Cabo Polonio, La Paloma, Aguas Dulces. Everything's closed for the election on Sunday. We should take advantage we can't vote and go up the coast. The Gojo took our first selfie out on Punta Ballena, our Ray-Bans angled to reflect the sun setting over Pan de Azucar. We kissed in the car, in the almost dark, in our Airbnb overlooking the Atlantic, on the starlit beach, in the jacuzzi with this ocean view. In Cabo Polonio, we barefooted the beach in tiny fishing town, climbed the old lighthouse, and posted photos of sea lions. We ate algae fritters and fried octopus. took the afternoon's last dune buggy back to the parking lot. I'd been playing DJ and tourist guide so far, so continuing east, I asked the Gocho to pick out the music. He connected to Bluetooth. Hola Siri, play Los Pericos. He karaoke'd to me. Cuídame bien, el lo mío es serio. In Aguas Dulces, we walked the sleepy shore till dusk, shared a short coffee, found and pocketed a heart-shaped rock. Driving back to the beach house, his playlist kept spinning the romance. He finally said, I think Siri thinks we are boyfriends. A cluster of stars hovered low in the sky, and we remembered some planets were supposed to be lining up. The Gocho asked Siri what planets were currently visible. Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn will appear 30 minutes after sunset in the western horizon, she reported. Do you believe in aliens? He asked. I'm an alien, I said. You're an alien. No, I mean extraterrestrials. Like, do you believe they're actually here living among us? I thought a minute. I think so. Maybe that's where we got cell phone technology. Hola, Siri, are you an extraterrestrial? Siri trilled. I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help you with? Let me try. Siri, do aliens exist? Here are the top results for aliens exist. I glanced at the Gocho's phone. Play the Blink 182 song. I never pick up hitchhikers, but when I saw the woman and her thumb out, I braked and pulled over. Buenas, she greeted. ¿Qué tal? Thanks for stopping. The buses are running on holiday schedule. ¿A dónde van ustedes? I replied, todo tranquilo. ¿A dónde vas vos? Balizas, she said, and leaned forward. ¿De dónde sos? I said the US, but living in Uruguay. She laughed. How funny to hear a gringo speak Chorugua. Viste, the Gocho said, even if you're indigenous in the United States, here you will always be the gringo. ¿Y vos? The woman asked. Colombiano? Are you guys friends or a couple? No, not Colombiano, the Gocho said. Venezolano, from near the border, the Andes. Gringochos, she exclaimed, and we looked at each other. Could be, he said. Then I repeated her moniker, Gringochos. She opened her backpack. Bizcochos? No, pero gracias. We have dinner reservations soon. The Gocho lied. He was suspicious. The pastries smelled delicious. Bueno, more for me, she said. Pero que rico. Seguro. She held up a Magdalena. Dulce de membrillo. I love quince. Was tempted, but said no thanks. She talked with her mouth full. Did we like Uruguay? What did we like? Who were we voting for on Sunday? We're permanent residents, we explained, but we aren't citizens yet. Can't vote tomorrow. Will you vote in Balizas? I can't vote either, she swallowed. I live in Las Balizas, but I'm from another planet. When I get word it's time to come home, ciao, my boy. The Gocho turned quickly. And do you like Uruguay? Very much, she said. I caught her eyes in the rear view. What do you like best about it? The food, she said, rolling the bag closed. That's my stop ahead. No sooner than she shut the back door, the Gocho asked me, did you hear what she said? I put the car in first, not 5 minutes after we talked about aliens. But how did they know? I shrugged, pulling back on the road. We asked Siri. Che, I was so scared. In Venezuela, you could never pick up a hitchhiker. This is Uruguay, baby. What was she going to do? Feed us bizcochos? I put my hand on his leg after shifting to third. But I'm sorry, I shouldn't have stopped without asking. She could have been a killer, but she was an extraterrestrial. I laughed. Kiss me, Gringocho. He leaned over and kissed me. Hola, Siri, play the Killers. Siri chose the song Spaceman. The Gocho looked at his cell phone. No puedo creerlo. Then he looked at those planets lining up. Believe it, I said. Siri thinks we are boyfriends who will pick up aliens. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. It's so fun to read with you all. I'm the next reader, so I'm gonna introduce myself again. I'm Kim. As I said before, I work for Lighthouse as the Young Writers Program co-director. My first book, White Lung, is coming out from Saturnalia Books in 2021, which is this fall, October 15th, 2021. I've been saying that for a couple years, so it's becoming real. And if you want to read more about me or see a list of publications or occasional blog posts or book clubs, you can visit kimberlyo'connor.net because .com was taken. So I have a few poems. The first one is more of a prose poem called Clairvoyance. And just a quick note, I had this whole thing written up where I was going to explain like the threads, the themes, and how they threaded through the book, but I'll just read the poems. I think that'll work out fine. So the first one's called Clairvoyance. It's about a friend of mine who's psychic. My friend who is psychic says the soul's greatest hope is to enter a body. When a soul enters a body, it's thrilled. It's like the best thing that ever happened to a soul. My other friend who is an accountant doubts this. She says it'd be better for a soul to be separate. Why would a soul want to deal with a body? A soul can't drink wine, I point out. We're at a wine bar. The soul can't run and jump, see colorful leaves. It is fall. She's not buying it. But I believe. My friend's friend who owns the wine bar brings us more wine for free. Pear, she is saying, and honey. I tell the story of visiting my friend's clairvoyance class to our other friend. It's a real class, one I would like to join. They did a reading, not of my future, more like my present, my auras. Were they right, she asks? Well, they said I had a lavender rose with one leaf. Leaves correspond to number of children, so that's right. They also said I had an outdated belief that women can't be powerful. Is that true, my other friend asks? It probably is. Around the same time, I had a chance encounter with an Indian fortune teller. Like from India? Yes. And she said in the fall I was going to get a new job, but I had to think big. Don't think about being in a fishbowl, the fortune teller said. Think about being in an ocean. That was first, before I visited the class. And at the class, they said I was swimming in scuba gear. And I was frustrated because I wasn't getting anywhere, because what I couldn't see was that I was in a fishbowl. This is a good story and true, but she looked skeptical. I tell my other friend her hair is beautiful, and she gasps and covers her head with her hands. She pauses, well, thank you, but we're going away next week, and after that there's my presentation, and I need to make an appointment. In the light of the wine bar, her hair looks like fire. It's difficult to love the body. It's difficult to live in the world. Already today, I could tell you 100 sad things. This year, one of my students has a bruised face. I hope his soul is still happy to be with his body. I hope his life gets better so he can look back from the end and be happy, like looking out the window of an airplane, the world growing smaller and bigger at the same time. So I will just briefly say the book title is White Lung, and it's meant to sort of gesture toward the disease black lung. And one of the themes is, one of the things I was trying to write when I was working on this book, which I worked on for over 9 years, was the way that racism and white supremacy can be passed down through white families with almost without the family members realizing what's happening. So this poem kind of tells a story along that. It's called The History of My Silence, and a bunch of the poems in the book are called The History of My Silence. The History of My Silence, Hendersonville, North Carolina, 1961. White people sit in the front, my great-grandmother says. My mother is angry. She wants to sit in the back. My mother is 6 years old, her first time on a bus. She wants to sit in the back. Why? She stamps her foot. My great-grandmother doesn't answer. The rest of the world, the boycotts, the marches, the fire hoses let loose on children, burning crosses, any of it does not exist for them. They sit in the front like good white women. I think that their silence, their compliance has flowed to me, a river I have to swim, even as the water turns to flame. So the next two I wrote around 2015, 2016, but I think they both might sound like they could have been written last week, last month. The first one is called If When. If when I read the news that a person whose name I did not know, whose name will now be famous, will be forever spoken with fathomless grief, I am wearing a black dress. If when I say person, I mean black man, if when you read person, you think or don't think black man, if when I keep reading, I can't stop crying or can't cry or am unable to keep working or keep working, if I'm paralyzed, if I keep working when I see the video, if I watch it or don't watch it, if when I read the words, I am right here with you, mommy, I want to vomit, if I am wearing a black dress, if I am a white woman, if I have forgotten the names, if you remember the names, if I list words from the news stories, police, Minneapolis, federal inquiry, multiple gunshot wounds, cafeteria supervisor, protesters, weeping, if you throw rocks, riot control, snipers, multiple gunshots, protesters, videos, Dallas, sir, Baton Rouge, nephew, brother, son, mother, child. If the police stop, you comply, say sir. If the police say sir, weeping. If I list the names or don't list the names. If the list of names is too long to list. If the list could fill 1,000 pages, longer. If when this happens, I write this, will I have done anything worth doing? Will I do anything? This is called If I Am Killed in a Mass Shooting. I could have been anywhere. I was there. I am a daughter of this country. I hot rolled my hair. My high school history teacher was a football coach. We never got past the Civil War. The boys had gun racks in their trucks. The deer they hunted hung upside down, dripped blood that formed a pool. We shredded their flesh. It made good barbecue. There is a feeling you are being watched. You glance over your shoulder. You light a candle in a vigil. I am a ghost. We are ghosts glancing backwards, looking for men with guns. Know that I wrote this not to call it in, but as a way to ward it off, a lucky charm. People cry, people cover people with blankets, flowers cover the sidewalks like blankets, the flowers fade to dust. Do with me whatever you want, America, I am yours. And this last poem is called Early Pleistocene Horses. So long ago, it can't be properly spoken of. I was there and a human in it, a woman. Ice stretched so far and wide, the horses had hardly any room to run. The horses ran on ice. I rode them nightly in the ice air, though my father told me not to. My hair, of course, streamed behind me like the horses' tails. We were cold all the time. I was the great-great-grandmother of Eve, even older than that. The horses were wild. I did what I wanted and died very young, like everyone did. The sunrise was cold as the sunset, and noon was no warmer. There were no words, though, for these noon, sunshine, wild horses. There was only my breath visible in the wind all the time, the live thing underneath me, holding me up, the live thing beating in my body. In time, these things happening in time for the short, bright time that they lasted. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, and only because her last name starts with Y, we have Paula Younger. Paula Younger's writing has appeared in many literary journals, including Gay Mag, HarperCollins 52 Stories, The Rattling Wall, and the Chicago Tribune's Printers Row Journal. She earned her MFA for the University of Virginia and received the Henry Hoynes and Bronx Writers Center fellowships. She also received the Beacon Award for teaching excellence.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out for the last person. With the last name Younger, I'm definitely used to always being last. um, Honestly, I've been kind of fluctuating on what I wanted to read tonight. And you can hear me, right? Can you please give a thumbs up if you can hear me? I've had like Zoom issues and I'm at my husband's office because I'm like fleeing my children and my computer battery is about to die. But I've been teaching at Lighthouse forever, love Lighthouse deeply, like everybody in the right mind would. And I kept fluctuating whether I was going to read fiction or nonfiction tonight. And I'm pretty cranky after a year of COVID and young kids at home and dealing with everything. So I'm going to read my nonfiction piece. And this piece was a part of DU's, or like not DU, but this program of That's What She Said, where men read women's essays. And it was also published in Roxane Gay's Gay Mag, but I realized I've never read it. And since I'm feeling pretty cranky, I'm going to read this one. But my essay is called So Hard to Love. And thanks again for staying for the last person with the last name Younger. I'm used to always being last, and I'm the youngest of four. And my computer battery is pretty low, but I should be here the whole time. So I had returned to Colorado from studying abroad in Italy for my sister's wedding. I used a settlement from a car crash to pay for the 5-week summer art history program after my dad kept saying he wouldn't help. He said I was too fancy and thought I was more important than I was. I had just finished my freshman year of college. I felt independent, strong, worldly. At my sister's wedding reception, I introduced my boyfriend to my relatives. Uncle Bob rarely left Kansas. He wore standard denim overalls. "This is my boyfriend, Jason," I said. Uncle Bob ignored Jason's outstretched hand. He looked me up and down, slowly, intentionally. I wore a blue dress I bought in Italy, sleeveless. It was floor length, but had a couple of small slits. Uncle Bob smiled and said, "My Paula, you filled out nicely." As a kid, I had been tall until 5th grade. I stopped at 5 feet 4 inches. Other kids kept growing. The girls in my class adored, "Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret." At their houses, we gathered in a circle and they chanted, we must increase our bust." I stayed silent, terrified my large breasts would keep growing. My friends stuffed their training bras during bathroom breaks, but I skipped over the training part and had a real bra. I crossed my arms over my chest. I slumped. I wore baggy shirts, but it was useless. The boys I'd known since 1st grade made a hobby to snap my bra and touch my breast. I was pushed into walls. If I walked past them while they played soccer or football, I was tackled and the boy copped a feel as he stood up. They talked to each other, wanted to know what my breasts felt like. They just wanted to touch. My breasts were called mountains, bumbos. Instead of playing during recess, I hunkered down on the side of the school with books and notebooks until a playground teacher would lecture me about not being social and send me back out to play. That summer, my mom got my sister and I a job handing out food samples in grocery stores. The company let me work, despite my being 12, because mom signed a form giving permission, and my 16-year-old sister promised to drive me. One Saturday, my sister and I worked at a Safeway in Thornton. We were in the same frozen food aisle, diagonally across from each other. She handed out pizza samples. I had milkshakes. A man in his 20s came up and said, "I would like a sample." "Chocolate or vanilla?" I asked. "Both. I'm greedy." We weren't supposed to, but I gave him one of each. He hung around asking me questions. I smiled but didn't answer. Then he slipped me a piece of paper, his name and phone number. "We should go out sometime, get to know each other," he said. And then he focused on my breasts. I held the paper and glanced at my sister. She raised her eyebrows, asking if I was okay. He pointed down the aisle. "Who's that?" he asked. "My sister." He winked. "She can come too." That summer, I learned to smile at the men I handed food samples to, but keep answers short, vague. I nodded my head, but turned my body away from them. I learned how not to encourage, but not to anger either. Defense was my specialty. By the end of the summer, I had stopped counting how many slips of men's phone numbers I received. I graduated college a semester early with honors. I was 21. Before long, I was working as a technical writer with a software company. In 2 years, because I had excelled, I was promoted to project manager. My boss, Rich, smiled and said, "You're the youngest project manager we've ever had. You're amazing." He liked to brag about me to clients, to coworkers. He raved that as a find, so smart and hardworking. We partnered with JD Edwards and IBM for their software installations on company sites. Our documentation and work was to interview employees about their different job titles and tasks. We wrote in detail what their jobs were, each minuscule task and how to do it. We helped customize the software, then we wrote the training manuals. I had to know every aspect of the company. At a building supplies company in Dallas, I was talking with a group of managers. They were all men in their 40s. I brought up issues that the employees had about getting work orders in. One man, bald with a large round belly, patted my head and said, don't worry your pretty little head about it. The other men smiled and chuckled. They turned their backs. I stepped back in. I'm a project manager. It's my job to know. He looked me up and down, then focused on my breasts. Someone's a little too big for her britches, he said. I've always needed glasses, but wore contacts. After that, every time I worked, I wore my glasses, stood up straight to appear taller, even though that pushed my breasts forward. And I spoke as loudly and deeply as I could. I still had to play defense and I couldn't anger anyone, but I finished my projects on time with happy clients. Then I discovered that Tom, another project manager at my company, who had the same amount of assignments as I did, was paid more than twice my salary. Tom often walked out on clients for smoke breaks and missed deadlines. He was not a high achiever. He was more of an anchor pulling projects down. I went to my boss and asked for a salary increase. But you're already earning 30% more than when you started, Rich said. But you hired me entry level. I'm doing the same work as Tom and the other managers, but I'm not paid anywhere near close to them. Rich patted my shoulder. You're only 23. We've already given you too many raises. You're punishing me for doing well? You don't need that much money. You should keep your expectations in check. When I was little, my dad entered his yelling sprees. I hid deep in my sister's closet, all the way in the back. I held her dresses in front of my ears to block the sound. But one day when I was 9, my brother opened the closet and said, Paula, don't be stupid. He won't hit you. After that, I stopped hiding and I started yelling back. The friends are visiting. They say, please stop it. Your dad's so scary. Don't make it worse. But the yelling felt good. I felt strong, tough. No one could hurt me. When I was 25 and had just returned from my honeymoon, my mom died in a car crash. My husband and I are moving to Virginia for graduate school. Him for his MBA, me for my MFA. My sisters and brother lived in other states. I was the only child still in Colorado. Jason and I felt guilty leaving my dad, so we bought him a plane ticket and brought him with us. My parents had been married 33 years. My mom was 58 when she died. She hadn't been ill, she died in seconds. But dad started saying things like, your mother always said that if something happened to her, she'd want me to carry on. He talked about how his grandpa had more than one wife. Mom had been a chemical engineer and worked full time. She earned more money than my dad as a community college math teacher, yet he never cooked. That was always her job. So were the 4 children. When my sister left her baby son with our dad for bonding, he drove from our farm to our neighbor's house to have his female neighbor change his diaper. Dad bragged that he never changed a diaper, even though he had 4 kids. After mom's death, I spent days teaching my dad how to do laundry, how to cook. My sisters and friends of the family said, it's too hard for him. He can't do it himself. As if he was a child. As if these things I started doing when I was 9 years old were so hard. My childhood was filled with washing clothes and hanging his white undershirts and briefs on our laundry line. In Virginia, one day when I came back from graduate school classes, Dad was drinking a beer and staring at a skillet and a carton of eggs. It's about time you got back. I'm hungry, he said. They're eggs, Dad. They're not hard. I've shown you how to crack them a million times. He shrugged. I told him they had to take care of himself. He wasn't my child. He looked at me hard and said, why do you make yourself so hard to love? Thank you, everybody. Thanks for sticking around.
Thank you, Paula. That was terrific. Thank you again to Wendy and Chip as well. And we have a little bit of time left for a conversation if anyone would like to chat. If you have a question for any of the readers or all of the readers, you can put it in the chat or you can send it directly to me. And as we're thinking about what those questions might be, we at Lighthouse are curious. This past year has this last year and all it has been led to you as a writer taking more risks in your work than you think you would have otherwise, or has it had an opposite effect, or something else entirely? Do any of you three want to hop in? Does that spark anything for you?
Not necessarily for me.
No, it felt like kind
Yeah, I was
of.
gonna say, I'm not the one to ask. I've been dealing with young children and emotional roller coasters and everybody together. I feel like I've been trying to hide in the basement from everybody.
You know, I think I can speak to that a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily say more or different risks, but I think that one thing that I thought a lot about was context in terms of working on, and as I worked on my work, and in the events of the last year, really 18 months, whether that's coronavirus, the higher visibility of the Black Lives Matter movement, I started to ask questions about, is it my turn to talk? And is what I'm working on valuable? And I don't necessarily know that I have the answer to what I'm working on is valuable, but these last year and 18 months has made me think about those questions in a way that I hadn't really been considering as fully as I think I should have been before.
Thank you.
What about you, Kim? Has it affected your work in that way?
I was trying to think at the same time. I would piggyback on what Wendy is saying about just really thinking about what I'm saying. Is it helpful? Is it relevant? It seems like a time to say something really vital if you're going to say anything at all. So I actually am just starting to get back into a little bit of a regular writing routine. The pandemic, I kind of went in spurts. I would have a marathon where I wrote for every day for 3 weeks and then write nothing for longer than 3 weeks. So, but that's an interesting question. So as the Young Writers Program Director, I often teach, and I was a teacher before a high school English teacher in another life, and still teach. So I know about wait times, and you're supposed to wait after you ask a question for it's some long, like 15 seconds or something, to give time to give people time to think. So I'm going to give some wait time and see if anybody out there has any more questions for us.
I have a question, everyone.
Oh, good job, Torin.
I'm just curious, even if it's been just like trickles here and there, what has been feeding your artistry lately, the last few months, 6 months? I'm just curious.
I can go first and other people can chime in. I think I might be different than a lot of people because, as my essay said, my mom died like when I was 25, and other essays like Andrea's read, like she died outside of our driveway in a car crash. So I think I've always had from a young age, just knowing that your time is limited. And I've had plenty of people in my life die before then. So I think what happened for a lot of people at the pandemic happened with me when I became an adult forever ago. So I've always known that you should take risks. You shouldn't worry what people think about you. You should do what's important to you. But I think everybody's had different experiences with the pandemic. And Amber Sparks, she's a really great writer. She wrote on Twitter, and I thought this was great, that the problem with the pandemic is that it's too much for everyone. So if you live alone, it's too much alone time. If you live with a husband and 2 kids like me, it's too much together time. It's just too much of one thing and you don't get any variety. And I've always been a huge reader, and post having kids has been really hard. And I've always tried to find ways for my writing. But I think the only thing that kind of sparked my creativity and kind of helped with depression and feeling afloat, like I have a brother who's a doctor in the COVID ward who's been working nonstop in Arizona, was just listening to audiobooks. I wasn't reading. I was just being like a child and having stories told to me. I'd go for walks. But honestly, that was the only thing that could kind of help get me back to feeling like art is important, to enjoying art, especially you can't see any theater, couldn't go to readings. I know a lot of people have been great with Zoom, but when you have young kids and you're dealing with virtual school and everything's Zoom, you're just ready to like throw computers out the window. And so I think everybody can find their own thing, but just hearing audiobooks after being such a lifelong reader, it actually helped me notice structure more. It helped me notice which details stood out to me more, aside from just being enjoyable. And I think as writers, we can tend to be snotty about a lot of different things, different genres, different ways of pursuing and enjoying a book. And I just think it's lovely to remember that at any age, any time, no matter if it's a pandemic or not, that there are just different ways of enjoying literature. There are different ways of enjoying books. You always gain something, you always lose something. And just for me, just a way of staying sane, feeling like an artist, feeling like it could still create with audiobooks.
Thank you. I've heard from other writers and readers too that they have not been able to read during the past year. And then I've known other people who've read an insane number of books. So what about you, Wendy or Chip?
I super dove into reading in the last year, and that was absolutely what kept me sane. But to echo what Paula is saying, audiobooks are so fantastic, and and I really, I think audiobooks, personally, I feel like audiobooks are reading, and it's sometimes the preferred reading format. But to that point, there's something different when you get it through your ear than rather through your eyes. And so it's really comforting. And so for me, it has been going into the work, because I haven't actually felt super creative in the last year. So it's been trying to take that as an opportunity to get through all the stuff I wanted to read for a long time. So I read a lot of books in the last year. And in fact, there was a time right during lockdown where I was kind of freaking out, and I thought, all right, okay, read a book a day, see if you can change your brain. I don't know if it changed my brain, but it was a good distraction. So, because everyone has their things.
That's awesome to hear from you all. For me, it's really been more sort of practical in the fact that I started taking a Zoom workshop in addition to the ones I teach. Of course, I became a student in a Spanish language hybrid prose and poetry class. So each week we're given prompts or assignments really. And so I've kept up with that, but also I made a sort of commitment to myself this year that I would do all the prompts that I gave my students. And that's something I often think about, but this year I really did it. And so those are the kind of things that have been, practically driving me.
Thank you. I think for me, it's been different every few weeks. There was one period of time when the only thing that got me through the day was probably Doritos. And then lately I had my coworker has been the person in charge of running a big youth poetry recitation contest over the year. And so I've been memorizing poems here and there. And that's been just fun and something that I've always wanted to do but haven't. So so that's been nice. And I definitely can't recite one now because I'm too keyed up from this event, but I really have done it. Let's see, I'm just seeing if we had any questions come in. Oh, thanks for these great comments, everybody. Well, let's just end with this question then. What are you looking forward to? Let's start with Chip.
Well, I am really looking forward to the world becoming safer enough to travel again. I haven't been out of Uruguay in a year and a half, of course, and we still have quite a bit of the virus, new cases alarming every day, so we're not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. But I haven't seen my family in so long, and I miss seeing, people up there. But I guess, I most look forward to seeing my family when it's safe to travel. But I'll also add, if I had to be stuck anywhere in the world, I'm glad I'm stuck here.
Thank you. I'm just still looking forward to my book release. What about you, Wendy?
I think what I'm really looking forward to is how I feel like we're sort of reconceptualizing community. I think Zoom fatigue is super real, but at the same time, I also feel like there has been an opportunity to connect with people. Like, for example, Chip, I don't know if you would be traveling to Denver to do this as part of Lighthouse. So it's awesome that we have this platform that it would be great to be in person, but there's also things that are gained by having, a virtual platform. And so that's the thing that I've just been thinking about so much, is how are we going to think differently about the people we interact with, the communities we make, the communities we choose, because I think that during COVID, we've had to be so intentional about choosing community. And I just hope that is something that we remember how to do when things open up, whenever that actually is going to be.
Thank you. Me too. And Paul, I didn't mean to put you last again, but I feel like you're going to have a good answer.
Do not put pressure on me, Kim. No, I mean, like most people, like looking forward to, I think like this summer versus last summer like was just so incredibly depressing, again, with like having children, and you just realize things were not going to end for a long time. Like everyone, I'm super excited to travel again and get to see people again. A lot of my writing group friends and I, we have the Denver Literary and Kidnapping Club, and we're all mothers, and we haven't gotten to kidnap anybody at readings for a while. I'm really looking forward to, like Benjamin Percy let us like duct tape him. Like I'm looking forward to just getting to go into readings and seeing people in person again, and definitely seeing my family again. My siblings are in different states. Like Wendy, I mean, as much as I'm anti-Zoom, anti-virtual, like being the cranky old lady like my parents who couldn't figure out how to program a VCR, like I did love it. Like I would have a student from Bosnia and a student from LA, and it was lovely to get to meet new people and to get to have different students. I think it's lovely. And even with my children, like last spring, and like the worst of it, like we would watch like a Frida Kahlo ballet from like London. And so I think it's wonderful to kind of be aware that there are ways we can travel. And I think all of us are probably all readers, and we experience that young as children with reading. Like I grew up on a farm, secluded, like books were my way to go anywhere. So I think that kind of reinforced that for all of us. And I think we could do that with our writing. And so I think it is just a good check-in that, hey, we do get to travel anywhere. We do have the luxury of Zoom. I am very curious, like Wendy, just to see what's going to stick change-wise and what's not. I remember during like the worst time of COVID, and of course, who knows what we're going to go through, but people were saying they're trying to find books set during like the 1918 flu pandemic. And I know that there's like the William H. Gass Swallows novel, I'm blanking on the name, but there are not many books. But everybody kept talking about the Roaring Twenties and how everybody partied. So I think we're all just going to be partying. I already see a lot of people partying. So I think we're just looking forward to maybe not having to worry all the time, and we can focus on just enjoying art. And I really hope, like I have a friend who's a script supervisor in New York City. She's been like working again since the spring, but her kids are still virtual after a year. I just hope that we can all kind of look out for each other more. I hope that we're going to actually make some real changes to like schools and our systems, and we're going to find ways of like really appreciating the arts that we've been living without for so long.
Thank you. I knew that would be great. Well, thank you all so much. Speaking of looking forward to things and parties, if you're, am I allowed to announce this? I guess I am. Torin mentioned earlier that it looks like with LitFest, we'll be able to have an in-person closing party if you're in the area. And if not, we have a million other virtual things. So if you scroll up, or maybe right now, you'll see the LitFest cheat sheet with everything that's still open and list of readings. So thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you again, Paula and Chip and Wendy. It was great to read with you. And we loved having our late night faculty reading with you. Anything I forgot, Torin?
Nope. Kim, thank you. Kim, thank you for reading. Thank you for emceeing. Like, hope you got enough
Yes,
love.
thank you.
you. Thank you all.
You can unmute and clap.